Happy Friday, everyone. Josh's severe weather. Hope you all have had a wonderful first week of the year. I'm here to talk about the future of what the weather looks like here in the next couple of weeks. We do have obviously one storm getting ready to affect the eastern United States here, already bringing some snow this morning to the Tulsa area, but another storm to follow it next week. And then what looks like it could be a pretty nasty outbreak of severe cold, which is set to start out in the western U.S. here in about 9, 10 days or so, and then spread south and east. And you'll see my exclamation point. That indicates an area we're going to be keeping an eye on for maybe some winter weather, some snow and ice as we head towards the latter part of the month of January and into February as waves of cold come in. So I'm not going to get super specific on who's going to see what cold. That's still a ways off, but I do want to kind of talk about the framework for what is going to happen here with the cold. So I'm going to talk about that for a few minutes, and then I'm going to get into some details about the storm here that I've kind of been hammering pretty hard here all week for the eastern US, and then next week's storm as well. So here is a look at what's going on. This is the upper level chart, and what it shows are colder than average heights. These are our storm systems, areas of instability, areas of cold, and then the brighter colors indicate areas of warmer air, high pressure aloft. And you'll see we've got multiple storms attacking the US, coming across the southern US, starting on the west coast, spreading downward here over the southern plains, and then spreading up the east coast. This is not uncommon at all for El Nino, which we have been in for a while here. In fact, the active onslaught of storms continues. This is next week. But what I want to turn your attention to is this brighter area of higher pressure aloft near Greenland and near northeastern Canada. This is what we call the Greenland block. The stronger this block gets, the more freely cold air is allowed to attack the US from the north and the northwest. And this is around this time next week. But as we head towards next weekend, you see this block intensifying. And rather than the high pressure we saw this time last year off the East Coast, we're actually allowing this colder air to attack here from the western United States and then spread south and eastward. This is next weekend. And as we go on past that, we see a lull in the cold, and then another block getting ready to set up after that, this time over Canada, over Northwest Canada and over Alaska. So I wanted to show you the longer term here. Excuse me. There we go. And you can see the block here takes a little bit of a break and then builds right back in. You see these higher heights here. This allows more cold to sneak in underneath. And by the end of the month of January, a very unsettled pattern across the southeastern United States, one that also favors an East Coast snowstorm. How that's going to happen right now is still obviously very uncertain. This is now a few weeks out, but the pattern starts to look a lot more favorable, because if you look at it right now, we're seeing storm after storm cutting underneath, but not really the combination of the cold we want to see with the moisture. As we go off into time, though, as this area of high pressure builds in over Greenland, over Baffin Island here, we do see a setup that's a lot more favorable for winter storms across the south and east. But we need to get that cold air there first. I'm going to talk about what that looks like here. Here is the GFS model. You can see the cold starting to spread and spill into the northern plains and northwest this time next week. It's going to be pretty brutal. This is a lot similar cold to what we saw right up before Christmas last year, 2022. I guess it's the year before last, but last winter. Now that cold was very quickly spreading south and east, and then it died off. We see pieces of that happening again here. This is a look at a couple weeks from now, but then we see more cold coming in, and this is the 21st. These temperatures are potentially 50 degrees Fahrenheit below average in some spots. So it means business, and that is certainly there to come here. Not just showing up on the GFS, but the European has showed that as well. Here is the European ensemble mean, and of course it's not going to be as extreme because it's the average of all the ensembles, but it indicates that cold is there, and we see it starting to spread south and east in what should be a significant period of cold weather over the central and then eastern United States around the end of this month and heading into the beginning of February, which is, climatologically speaking, the coldest time of winter is the end of January, beginning of February. As the ocean water continues to cool off the Atlantic, this sets up very favorable weather, assuming we do get enough low pressure to get a storm to spin up. So things are looking more favorable for the southeast, for the mid-Atlantic region, and coastal Canada as we get towards the very end of this month and especially the beginning of February. So we're just getting started here with winter. This is the Arctic oscillation. The fact that it's negative right on through the next month is definitely a good signal here for cold and wintry weather in the United States, in Canada. as the negative Arctic oscillation indicates that we've got a good chance of seeing that Arctic air. It comes in waves. The NAO, this is the block, the Greenland block that I've talked about. It's pretty negative right now, but does start to come back towards positive. That was that little bit of a thaw I showed you guys here in a couple of weeks, but then right back to negative. And on the back end of a negative NAO, when things get closer to zero, closer to neutral here is when we often can see significant East Coast winter storms. So you see the time frame for that right now looks to be potentially around the 22nd, but maybe a better shot as we get later into January and really honestly into early February. Here's a look at the PNA. This is where the cold is attacking the west, the warmth in the east. And with it being negative, that's where we see less of a shot of winter weather across the southeast. When it's negative, we want to see it go positive. And that threat certainly starts to begin here around the 24th, 25th of January and really starts to peak as we get into right at the flip of the month into February. So that positive PNA is more favorable to see something wintry here in the southeast and in the mid-Atlantic region. I know a lot of you guys in places like Baltimore and DC have been saying, oh, I see this big winter storm's coming, but it's going to be rain for us. And that is something you see here a lot with the negative PNA. With the PNA going positive, that gives us some better odds to see some winter weather. So anyway, let's talk about our storms here. That's probably more detail than you needed to know, but it's there. And I'm going to kind of annotate things so you guys can see. And here's our storm system right now spinning across the southern plains. It is going to track basically in this direction. The cold air is pretty limited with this, but as the storm gets into this area here tomorrow night and Sunday, what it's going to allow to do is it's going to track along this area, and enough cold air is going to be in place for areas just away from the coast to see a pretty significant amount of snow. I've talked about that for several days. That has not changed. What you'll also see is on the southern end of this, an active subtropical jet aimed at Florida and the northern Gulf states. This is going to bring us a lot of rain here in the next 24 to 36 hours, and there will be a limited severe threat as well, mainly along the immediate coast. And I will talk a bit about that. Our next storm is set to dive down in here, and we're actually going to see some warmer air with that storm. And so the track is going to be farther north and west. This weekend storm goes in here. Next week's storm actually cuts up in this direction. We actually see an area of high pressure that's going to circle in. And with that, we're going to see more of a moisture feed up the East Coast, which is not what you want to see if you're a winter lover. In fact, it brings us the threat for heavy rain, wind, and even some severe weather, and something we saw very much back in the middle of December. And that could be some chaotic weather here across eastern New England, flooding, strong winds. And, you know, with all the rain we've had here in the last few months, this is definitely something we're going to be watching very closely, kind of an atmospheric river that brings us the potential for significant rain. It also has the potential for significant snow lined up somewhere in here, and the details are still a little bit uncertain on that, but I'm going to kind of start to break that down. So here's our first storm. This is the NAM model, and some snow across Oklahoma and Kansas here this morning, but not a lot. Overnight tonight, this is actually 3 in the morning, we start to see some ice developing in the interior of the southeast, heavy amounts of rain in the deep south and the mid-south, and some wet snow falling over central Illinois and Indiana. Not really a big one. We're only going to see snow for a few hours overnight into tomorrow morning. We're starting to see some more significant snow around lunchtime tomorrow over far southeast Ohio, northwestern West Virginia, and then the interior of the Northeast. At that point, we're starting to see a change back to rain across North Carolina, and then it ends in the afternoon and evening. But here's where the more significant snow rates are expected here. Basically, the Poconos region over into central Massachusetts, eastern New York State, southern Vermont, southern New Hampshire, and southwestern Maine. Best chances of seeing snow. In fact, in New England, we're going to see some bonus snow tomorrow morning as this low strengthens off the coast. It could still be snowing at 1 in the afternoon on Sunday in Boston and especially Bangor, Maine, all the way up into far southern New Brunswick and southwestern Nova Scotia. And on the back end, we're going to see, I call it annoying northwesterly flow snow, but we'll see that all the way down into the mountains of East Tennessee, Western Virginia, Southeast Kentucky, and right up into the Laurel Highlands and the snow belts here, continuing past 2 in the afternoon here on Sunday. Here's a closer look at the East. Not going to spend too much time on this. I think we've hammered this down, but not a lot has changed. You can see, though, rain around Louisville here tomorrow around 5 in the morning does shift over to wet snow, probably drops an inch or so, but then we see heavier snow rates starting in Pennsylvania, Western Maryland, Southeast Ohio. This is tomorrow afternoon. Then here tomorrow night, we start to get to the height of the storm from the Northeast, but at that point, it is rain along the I-95 corridor. The one exception, I think, would be New York City. where it's possible this rain snow line may try to drop back south, at least catching the Bronx and maybe the Yonkers here with a heavier thumping of snow. We're very close on the line here. We could see Long Island pretty much missing out on snow and seeing primarily rain. But if this shifts a little south, like some of the global models have shown, then that can shift again. So very uncertain still. I would love to say I know the exact total every community is going to get, but 48 hours out, that's just not possible. But know that primarily speaking, we're going to see most of that heavy snow north of the New England Thruway, north and west of 95 here Saturday night. And then continuing Sunday, where we've got some heavy rain on Cape Cod, but heavy snow when you get up to the south shore of Boston and especially across northeastern portions of the Boston area, the North Shore there, and right on up into New England here. Well, that is New England, but into Maine and New Hampshire, northern New England. So then we see some wraparound snow behind it. Moving along here, here's our, actually, let me forget that. We'll come back to it later. But here's what our official forecast from the National Weather Service is showing. Generally speaking, the area in purple is looking at more than 6 inches of snow. The area in blue is looking at more than 3. The lighter colors indicate less. And I have to skip past, but you can see the heaviest amounts start off in the Poconos, continuing over northwest Jersey, up into the Hudson Valley, Catskills, and Taconics, right on up into the far northwest suburbs of Boston. Interestingly, the NWS only has about an inch or two in Boston proper. And then we see that continuing up to Portland, Maine, and then maybe as far up as Bangor and Augusta, Maine here. So potentially a pretty big snow, but it's going to be a quick mover for most of us in this section here, as totals have trended down back in here. They have come up a little in here, but this is just the beginning of what's going to be an active winter for us here in the Northeast. And looking at Canada, we are seeing a pretty fine line here where the south coast of New Brunswick just sees a couple centimeters, but southwestern Nova Scotia sees the potential to see 20 to 30 centimeters of snow. Looking at our next storm system, it is going to be active on the west coast this weekend. Snow across the interior of the west, and this one drops all the way down with snow to just outside of Tucson and Phoenix, all the way down towards El Paso. We could see a little bit of snow, and into the mountains of northwest Mexico Sunday into Monday. And then that follows with yet another series of storm systems, and then the cold comes down, and we see the threat for some snow in the Pacific Northwest, including Seattle and Portland, and maybe the higher elevations in the Bay Area of California here by next weekend. But let's not get too far out ahead. As this storm spreads into the central United States, we are going to see significant snow falling in the southern plains and Rockies. The potential is there for over a foot of snow in the higher elevations. And you can see here the GFS model, not in agreement with the European, but has significant snow in northwestern Oklahoma, northeast Texas, Panhandle, all the way up into the Omaha area, into Iowa, and then spreading up into Illinois. And you kind of miss out on this storm in some of these areas, but we're going to make up for it here next Tuesday into Wednesday. And then that could follow with yet another storm, which the GFS says could be very significant. But again, I would not put a lot of weight on one model run here. So the pattern is more favorable for it. So next weekend could be pretty interesting here in the central United States. Here's a look at the European, by the way, which shows a pretty significant snow around the Ozarks region, maybe St. Louis and Chicago, but a better shot over portions of northern lower Michigan, including right around I guess the top of the thumb here, whatever the middle finger is. I'm not from Michigan, so I don't really know, but definitely a potential for significant snow. And then the Euro shows this particular next storm over the weekend, actually a little farther north of Chicago, more for Iowa, northeastern Nebraska into southern Wisconsin, and eventually across lower Michigan. So we're going to make up for this snow deficit pretty quickly here in the next 10 days. Here is a look at the GFS showing that storm system. This one will produce some severe weather down south as well. Heavy wet snow on the northwest side and a lot of wind as we get into Tuesday. I wouldn't call it a blizzard. I know some folks have, but that potential is there if this storm wraps up in the right spot for near blizzard conditions around St. Louis, maybe northwest Tennessee, up towards northwest Indiana and into Michigan. And the time frame for that's going to be Tuesday night, ending on Wednesday. Here's a look at the east, and we've already talked about this storm pretty significantly. Here's a look at the next one, and we are going to see again, a front-running ice event possible here in northwestern North Carolina up into Virginia. This one has a better shot at going over to ice in central Pennsylvania before a shift to rain. It also has the potential to bring severe weather into the Carolinas, and I would not be shocked if Virginia saw a little bit of severe weather Tuesday night, but a lot of rain and wind here on the front end on Wednesday morning across New England. And then we get a break in the action until next weekend, and the GFS is up to its own tricks again here with another storm system through the Great Lakes and more interior ice and snow rain at the coast. So this really isn't a big winter storm for the northeastern coastal sections where so many folks live. But we're starting to set that stage. Here's a look at Chicago. We're finally going to see potentially up to 5 inches of snow next week with the first system, and maybe another 5 inches after that. The mean kind of shows about 6 or 7 here, and then up to about a foot. So a couple of moderate snowfalls potential, but potentially more if you believe some of these members. St. Louis, those numbers aren't as high. There's only one extreme model showing anything extreme. Wow, I just realized I just said that. But looking farther at the means, we see a pretty good chance of seeing close to 5 inches from Tuesday's storm and maybe a few more after that. And Detroit, we're going to see some activity as well, more to your north and west, but the potential to get about 4 inches here with next week's storm, and then maybe 4 more with the weekend storm after that. Let's look at the southeast. I don't want to ignore the threat for severe weather here and heavy rain. It's going to be really nasty here. This is this afternoon and evening. A line of storms getting going over South Louisiana this evening could produce a tornado or two and a lot of heavy rain. That is going to shift and affect coastal Alabama, Floribama region here later this evening and overnight. And then we see a marginal risk for some severe weather tomorrow, but it starts to fall apart. This is going to be pretty quick moving. By the time it gets to South Florida late in the day tomorrow, there could be a few thunderstorms, but the dynamics for this storm are already heading up into the mid-Atlantic region. So we do have a marginal risk of severe weather, including a risk for a tornado or two from coastal Louisiana into coastal Northwest Florida here today, and especially tonight. Tomorrow, a marginal risk all the way down to Alligator Alley. The Tamiami Trail could see a little bit of severe weather towards the end of the afternoon tomorrow and early tomorrow evening. A better chance, though, as we head into early next week. This could be more of a regional outbreak of severe weather, including a few tornadoes. I'm especially concerned about South Louisiana, Mississippi for Monday afternoon and Monday night, but Houston also in that area. I think it would be during the day in Houston. So for the championship game at night, this is pretty much through, but certainly that could change still. And then on Tuesday, the Storm Prediction Center is saying the entire southeast coast has to be on the lookout for severe weather, all the way up to Raleigh, North Carolina, and to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, and especially the low country of South Carolina, central and southeast Georgia, and northern Florida. This could be a significant outbreak of severe weather. Here's a quick look at that timing, but we got to move things along here. Next week's storm, this is Monday afternoon here. Whoops. That is noon, 1 o'clock central. And we're going to see multiple rounds of heavy rain and potential severe weather. Better chance across Louisiana. Here's a peek at that as well. This is our lightning density. Whoops. That's not what I wanted. Sorry about that. Our lightning density back. Got excited because I saw newer model information, but let's stick to what we were looking at. And here's Monday afternoon, a lot of lightning along the Gulf Coast, a lot of rain. Southeast Louisiana looks like it'll get hit hard here between 6 o'clock and midnight on Monday night. Then that threat shifts eastward. Here's a look at the southeast as well. And as we head to next week, lots of rain and thunderstorms Monday night into Tuesday. Our low pressure track into western North Carolina favors a squall line from near Charlotte all the way down to Charleston, Columbia, and into the Daytona area at the end of the day on Tuesday. And then at night is when our best chance for severe weather exists over eastern North Carolina, Myrtle Beach area, all the way down to about Palm Beach. This would be around 8 to 10 o'clock at night, Tuesday night, strong winds possible as well. And here's our lightning flashes here Monday night, Tuesday morning, and then we aren't going to see potentially as much lightning, but we do see the strong wind threat. I think Florida has a better shot at seeing some pretty nasty storms here around the Tampa Bay area early in the evening Tuesday, and then shifting south and east Tuesday night. So that's a look at our threat for severe weather. Wind is also going to be an issue, not as much with this storm, although we're going to have windy weather at the coast. But next week, this is a powerhouse of a storm with gusts potentially getting past 50 miles per hour Monday night across Middle Tennessee and the Florida Gulf Coast. And then take a look at Tuesday. We see winds really cranking up in the southeast here, 50 to 60 mile per hour gusts possible, with the potential for gusts that get over 60 miles per hour, even in the Raleigh area, Wilmington and Myrtle Beach Tuesday evening, and then spreading up the East Coast into New England and the New Jersey shore and Long Island Tuesday night. We may see winds ripping close to hurricane force if the GFS is right. So this is looking a lot like what we saw with those storms back in the middle of December. Unfortunately, more wind and heavy rain coming for the same exact spots here Tuesday night into Wednesday. More on that to come next week, but I really appreciate y'all's time today. If you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. I'm going to do my best to respond to comments, but I'll be honest with you guys. I've had to distance myself a little bit just because things have gotten so busy, but I really do appreciate y'all's time. And this is just a blessing to be able to share with you all. I'm a Christian man, and I give all the glory to God who gives me this calling to share with you all. I'm not going to talk too much about my faith, but it is super important to what I do every day. I hope that it is for you as well. Paul tells the church of Romans 24, 8, 24, 25, for we are saved by hope, but hope that is seen is not hope. For what a man seeth, why doth he yet hope for? But if we hope for what we see not, then do we with patience wait for it. And I think this just confirms that those of us who are believers just continue to eagerly await the redemption that comes to us through God. For in hope we have been saved by accepting Jesus. I pray that's what you've accepted, but if it's not, I'm not here to judge you. Whatever you believe in, just know that I give all the glory to God. He has put you in my life. He has put me in your life. And I truly believe he's a great God. I'm happy to pray for you no matter what you or any of your loved ones are going through. I pray for everybody on this channel, and I definitely appreciate your time. Again, not about me, but in my opinion, it's all about God. So I hope you all have a lovely day today, and get ready for this weather that's coming. We'll catch up with you again here tomorrow morning. God bless you.